Welcome to Growing Home, the podcast that helps you take care of the place that means the most to you, your home. I'm your host, Terry Therrien, alongside your co-host, Len Giddix. So good morning, Len, and we've got another early session for the Growing Home podcast team.
Yes, the sun's up, Terry. Time to get to work.
Yeah, nice warm day ahead of us here. But one thing before we get going into today's episode, we've got a new, we'll call it feature of the Growing Home podcast. And
Boy. All right.
Oh, yeah, this is a great one. So a fun thing, we're going to do the Growing Home podcast grab bag. And what we're going to do is everybody who emails us between the episodes at podcast@mackeysinc.com, so that's podcast at MACKEYSINC.com. That's podcast@mackeysinc.com. We're going to select from our grab bag of goodies here, and that's from all the different manufacturers and brands we work with. They send us all these goodies. We've got travel mugs, hats, T-shirts.
I particularly like the Ford pickup that they sent us.
The Ford pickup, that one, I think it's in the bottom of the bag, so it might be a few weeks before we pick out the Ford pickup. But we'll pick a random item we've got here. We'll send a little thank you note to you and appreciate your feedback and ideas for the podcast. So for not this episode, but on the next one, anybody emails us at podcast@mackeysinc.com, we'll pick a winner at random, and then we'll pick a prize at random.
Wow.
So fun thing.
These prizes may be worth, thousands of dollars. They may be.
They might be. I mean, a good fitting hat, that's priceless.
No. Especially when you have a head the size of mine.
All right. So today's episode, we're right smack in the beginning of, or I think we're getting right to the middle of June here. A special month for us.
Very special. And it's National Pollinator Week, the 17th of June through the 23rd. And it's the 12th anniversary of the start of that. So it's only been around for a few years. Pollinators are a relatively new hot topic that we're, in both the science and in the public, are just learning about.
Who founded Pollinator Week? Or is it coming from a particular organization?
Probably God did. But then, then...
This is kind of his creation.
Yeah, and then there was it Brian the bee? Was it from Monty Python? Was it Brian? I don't know. Who knows?
Okay. Well, anyway, we're still celebrating no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you celebrate with mead, not beer or champagne.
With mead.
With mead. Of course, that's liquor made from honey.
Oh, it reminds me of those Bud Light commercials. Dilly. Cool. But there's a story here.
Yes, there is. It's a wonderful story, and it's been happening. It's been developing over millions of years, really, Terry. Because what we have is a synergistic relationship here. It's a perfect marriage, where the plant needs something from the bee, and the bee is attracted to the flower that's giving something to attract the bee. And together, they make wonderful babies together. It's wonderful. The plant is able to produce seed, and the bees are able to raise their broods.
Right. And I mean, sometimes it begs for the debate. What came first, the plant or the pollinator?
Well, as I told you, I think flowers were first pollinated by elephants, but that didn't work out. So the bees took over.
The bees were more efficient.
Yeah, so the plant was here before the bees.
Gotcha. Cool. So, what's at the core of this relationship we have here?
Well, just like with animals or people, most plants, now there's a lot of things that we don't know about plants, a lot of things that we do, but plants are really different in some cases. But in most cases, we need to get the DNA from the daddy plant to the DNA of the mommy plant to make a seed. And this is the best way that nature has to get different changes in individuals. Mm-hmm. And then if evolution takes over, some traits over the years may be more successful than others, and that's what happens. But if that didn't change, then there could be some catastrophic results. If the character of a plant was always the same, it could be bad for the species.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of male-female relationships. Now, some plants have what's called a perfect flower. The male parts are on the same flower as the female plants.
Okay.
Okay, that's an Asiatic lily, for example, an Easter lily.
Oh,
you can see both the male and the female plants. They're very large.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some have male and female flowers on the same plant, but they appear at different times, like the squash plant. I mean, every Italian knows, and most gardeners know, that you can take these male squash flowers that appear earlier and deep fry them with some sort of cheese mix inside, dip them in batter, and then deep fry them, and they're just very good.
Really?
Very good. Yeah, you dip them in a little bit of sauce. You can almost have them like an appetizer.
Oh, okay.
But you don't want to do that to the female flowers because they're going to produce the squash or the pumpkins or the cucumbers, whatever.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to take all the male flowers too. But the male flowers come up before the female flowers.
Mm-hmm.
They come up at a different type, at a different position in the plant.
Okay.
But the pollen, because of the pollinator,
Yeah.
is successfully transferred. Hopefully, sometimes we have. Lately, there's been a lot more failures. My zucchini. We used to have great zucchini, but now I don't have any. I didn't get anything.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's because we're running out of pollinators. Did you ever think of that? Or maybe the weather wasn't right for the pollinators to have it. I mean, you had female flowers, you had male flowers, but they didn't get together. And the way they get together is through the pollinators. Now, there are plants, just like humans, that are male plants and female plants. These are the hollies. This is where you need to buy. When you buy a holly, you need to buy a female plant, and you need to have a male around. Now, it can be 20 females to one male.
Yeah,
and
lucky guy.
When I come back, in another life, I want to be a male holly, okay? But there's enough pollen to go around there, and you just have to plant that male closer by. Now, there are some oddballs, like the dandelion.
Yeah.
And I just learned this about a year ago. Dandelions don't need to be pollinated in order to form seed. It's a big genetic, there's a term for it, but we won't need to go into that. Just know that don't blame the pollinators. Just because they're lighting on the dandelion flower, they did not cause all those dandelions in your lawn.
Oh, man.
The dandelions did.
The dandelions did it on their own.
They did it, and we'll get into that sometime, but we'll have to make sure the audience is over 18.
Yeah. Yeah. The explicit episodes. Yeah. How does the fertilization actually work?
Well, there's two ways a plant can be pollinated, okay? There's wind pollination, and then there's pollination by animals, insects, birds, butterflies, even in the tropics, bats.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, wind-pollinated plants are trees, many trees, all of your grains and grasses like wheat, rice, corn, for example. Now, when you look at the Midwest, a lot of the fields out there, a lot of that land is all that.
Wind-pollinated.
Wind-pollinated. And the trees, when you have all your allergies, and if you look out on your car in the morning, it's just full of pollen. That's tree pollen. And you can see how much is out there. So when a plant is wind-pollinated, the male flower, or the male portion of the flower, has to produce just a gob of pollen to ensure that the right tree is going to get the right pollen.
It's a numbers game.
Oh, it is. And, you're sneezing and hacking through it all.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're just in the way of these plants doing their work.
Right. That's why I grow my nose hairs very long.
Yeah. The wisdom.
Yeah, you learn over the years. Anyway, of course, then there's the pollinators, which is a more specific relationship that's developed over the years. Now, there's pollinators that will only visit certain flowers at certain times of the year, like the mason bee. Mason bee is going to hit orchards, and they're going to be most active in the spring. The squash bee only visits the squash plant. And there's an interesting story there that we'll have to get in another episode, but it's just absolutely fascinating of how the squash bee, finds a mate. But anyway, it's a very specific relationship that has developed over millions of years. And some are very specific, and some, like we'll say the bumblebee, it's any port in a storm for a bumblebee.
Yeah.
It'll go to any plant where it can get pollen and nectar to raise its brood. A honeybee, the same way. Honeybee's going to go after a specific crop when it's abundant. That's why you have different types of honey. You have spring honey, you have mid-season honey, and then you have the fall honey.
Right.
Well, they're whole different flavors, and they are different colors, and they're for predominantly different plants.
Right. And Len, that perfect, segue into the gift I got you.
I know. Thank you so much.
Which this past weekend I was at the Town of Columbia has a Save the Bees festival, and our tent was right next to Shook's apiaries, and they had all these different honey set out, and they had it lined up from light, like a medium color, and then to a dark color. And so I've got those here for you today. And I was hoping, and all that's dependent on what flowers are in bloom when the bees are collecting their nectar and bringing it back to produce the honey. He was saying that the spring flow sometimes is very difficult to get, but if the conditions are right, which he had this year, you've got that nice light colored spring flow right in front of you there. So if you could for us, could you give us a taste, and what are the difference in the flavors between the three as you go through them?
Okay. All right, Terry. It's my pleasure to taste the various honeys. I'm going for the spring honey, okay? This is very light. It's like a Chardonnay,
very much so. It
very much. And then I will dip the spoon, this very special spoon, into it, and let's taste this.
From our honey sommelier here.
It is very, very light. It's like a very shallow honey flavor. It's a lot like an agave nectar.
Really
thick. Yeah. All right, shall we go to the what color
jar number 2?
Yeah, jar number 2, which is mid-season. What color would you say that was? That's not quite an amber. It's more like a cider.
Yeah.
Cider.
Yeah, I think that's a very light brownish color. Very.
Now I'm getting a honey flavor, but this is more than a honey flavor. There's another flavor in there. Like a good beer.
Yeah.
You have those esters that bring in flavors from the. This has got it. So it's very
aromatic, almost
aromatic, perfumey. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is great. That's perfect on a crumpet. Let me tell you, toasted crumpet. All right, and then we're going to go for the fall honey.
The fall honey, the darkest of the three,
which is
almost molasses looking.
Yes. Yeah. Well, how can we relate that to wine? What's the wine there?
Oh, that's a Cabernet.
Oh, Cabernet.
Yeah, full bodied.
Oh, and it is. But it almost has a citrus essence to it.
Really?
Yeah. So we have 3 different honeys from the same bees, but from different sources, and it's all different. It makes life worth living.
Well, that's very cool. So, I mean, that just, kind of, it's a prime example of these bees as they're, out there. DJ Shooks was telling us that he's got 50 hives around the Willimantic-Windham area.
Yep.
And, depending on what's in flowers, what the nectar they're bringing back and the different color and shade and flavor of honey that they're producing.
That's right. And you are so lucky to have a guy like Mr. Shooks in the area, because look, you get the honey from the honeybees and just the variety and the knowledge that it's right there. The relationship becomes real.
Yeah. And so you can find him at the Willimantic Farmers Market on Saturdays. I would definitely recommend stopping and talk to him. He had a display hive that he keeps it's a fully functional hive. It's got 2 panels on it.
Yeah.
And I probably asked him about 25 minutes worth of questions. And we both could have kept going, but then, we had to tend to everybody that was visiting us at the festival. It was incredible of how fast he could point out the queen. That it just blew my mind. And then they even had a book on, I Spy, Find the Queen.
Oh, really?
And nobody else could do it except for him and his wife would just be like, oh, there she is. And they would look at the other bees and how the other bees were surrounding the queen. And that's how they found it. I still couldn't do it. So it's
yeah, but he knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah. So anyway, that was fantastic, and kind of showing a